Ladies and gentlemen, 15-year-old Indian Rameshbabu Praggnanandaa, or just Pragg for short, is one of the world's top wonder kids when it comes to playing chess. Here he is playing former world champion Vishy Anand in a blitz game a couple of years ago. Just look at how at ease he feels in front of the board. Since that encounter, his rating has been growing ever since, along with his confidence and maybe also his chances of pulling something really big. This week he played Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura and Alireza Firouzja in one of the world's toughest chess tournaments, and he drew all three games. Today we'll go through the best game that Pragg has ever played, in my opinion. It'll teach you how to punish an opponent when he or she makes a small inaccuracy. And the story behind the game is, of course, one that will ask the question if family love, raw talent, and a so far unspoiled joy of chess can take Pragg all the way. All right, here we are. Welcome to Yellow Rabbit Chess. I hope this video finds you all doing well. Pragg is playing white. We are in 2018. He's up against Teja Ravi. So Pragg is 13 years old and he's rated 2,519, and he had just become the second youngest grandmaster in the world. He's a bit shy on interviews, our young rising star here. So for instance, if he's asked, "What kind of a player are you, Pragg?" he just goes, "I like to play e4. So that's what he does here, and his opponent Ravi answers with c6, the Caro-Kann, a solid but a bit passive defense. A good way, by the way, to get familiar with the concept of fighting for a square, in this instance d5. So Pragg goes d4, d5, here it comes, and this is pretty standard stuff. You may consider here, which piece would you like to bring out now? You know, Caro-Kann is a bit like the French defense you get after e4, e6. Only here you don't get to listen to your light squared bishop complaining about that he never, joins the fight. Because you bring him out now before you close the center. And here Pragg goes h4, trying to harass the bishop with moves like that. We'll see how it happens if black does nothing here. If he, for instance, plays knight to d7, he didn't, but if he had done that, Pragg would have gone g4, bishop would have retreated, f4, trying to protect it, and then g5 and bishop f7 and h5. This is how they play, even grandmasters. They just advance their pawns if they get the chance. So would be a textbook example of, what does white have here that black lacks? Space. That can be a plan too, to gain some space. You can play for pieces, you can play for kings, squares, and space as well. Well, he does not do that, our opponent. He plays h5 to counter all this. And Pragg goes c4, which is often a good idea. The question that many chess players often ask themselves is, do I bring the pawn out in front of the knight or behind it? Well, here the c-pawn sort of helps create pressure in the center, and threatening this exchange is cool because central pawns are just worth slightly more than other pawns. I'd say 1.1 point, for instance. It's not much, but small advantages tend to add up. And of course you can Ravi goes e6, closing the center here. Oh, sorry. And leaving this bishop out in the cold. But that's what it was trained to do in the Caro-Kann. So Pragg follows up with knight to c3. There's a typical question that the press and people like you and me would sometimes like to ask these wonder boys. And that is, who taught you how to play chess? Was it your dad? No, says Pragg. In this case, it was the same person who taught Bobby Fischer how to play chess. The American world champion and grandmaster Bobby Fischer. And that was his sister. Here's the family. They lived together in Chennai, India. And Pragg's rise to the stars all happened because of his sister's TV addiction. So her parents got so upset that they enrolled her in a chess class. And Pragg was watching his sister and he was asking, how does this piece move? And what about this? What is castling? He was 3.5 years old. And his sister was showing him. Develop your pieces. Central pawns are worth slightly more than other pawns. And so, a handful of years after, he's playing in all sorts of tournaments. So am I blocking the bishop here? No, because this knight is just passing through. Where is it going? We'll see. So Pragg didn't travel a lot recently, but prior to the pandemic, of course he did. He used to be accompanied by his mother and his sister, Vaishali, who taught him the game, who's also a really strong player. And here he is in a tournament. You see the white stripe in his forehead is a sign of affiliation to Hinduism. So his mom cooks and prays for him, and his dad stays at home and makes some money. So, pawn is, Pragg plays knight to e2, and black takes the pawn because it's no longer protected. So is that a mistake? Well, now it's threatened. Would black try to hold on to the pawn? Let's see what happens if he does that. Then he would end up in a position like this, and that is nasty for black. I mean, after the exchange here, he can't really hold on to these pawns, doubled, isolated pawns. That is not what you're looking for if you're black, or white for that matter. So, just leave those gambit pawns. Don't try to hold on to them. Would be my clear advice. So instead, black retreats his bishop. He wants to hold on to it because it's on this pretty cool diagonal. So that's why he wants to, avoid the change with this knight. Pragg goes bishop to g5. Black develops queen b6, threatening b2 and putting pressure on the d4. And now Pragg takes the pawn. And this is a pretty standard position. It's been played before a lot of times. So what is black thinking here? He's thinking, should I take this pawn or should I stay home with the queen? I think one of the things that you learn when you learn how to play chess is that this pawn is often poisoned. Well, sometimes you can eat it, sometimes you can eat poisoned food and nothing happens. And then it's a free meal, right? In Scandinavia, there's the story that a father once said to his son that I will you everything. I'll give you everything as long as you promise me in a game of chess never to take on b2 or b7. So that's why we call it the will pawn. I think it's just poisoned in English. And on that note, black takes the pawn. I guess Ravi, who's playing black, Ravi's dad obviously never struck him a deal like that. He's probably thinking that, one of the most common counters to queen taking the will pawn, the poisoned pawn, is rook to b1. But he can't do that. So the normal punishment is not working. So Ravi plays knight c to e4. You see the threat? What is the threat? every time your opponent has made a move, just check what is the threat. It is this, of course, a nasty check on d6, forcing the king to move, and then he can't castle and all that. So we'll have to cover that. We do that elegantly by developing the knight on e7, opening up the diagonal for the black bishop. And if you were thinking, you know, let's just go one move back, can I just say check here and then take the bishop? Well, let's see what happens. If you do that, then we have the nasty check here. And it gets even nastier because your queen now is that. So good thing that black stuck with knight f5. So Pragg castles. And at this point in his career, 13 years old, 2,519, there's no doubt that Pragg is being followed. I mean, even though India has a lot of talented chess players, not everyone is like Pragg. So he's got tutors and mentors, and his games have been analyzed a lot online, including this, not least by many Indian commentators, which can be really, I wouldn't say funny, but cozy, with the Indian accent and the atmosphere. And just so that you can get a feel of it yourself, I'm going to let Sagar Shah with Chessbase India take over this analysis just for a few moves.
Knight takes g3.
Enjoy.
Before you make an automatic recapture, think for your move. It's white to play here. The third point. Can you get it? Can you play like Praggnanandaa? Well, a natural recapture would be knight takes g3, but after bishop e7, already I would say black is out of the woods to a great extent, because rook b1, which is such a powerful move, is now stopped because bishop controls that square. So the right move here is to play rook to b1. You are a piece down, and it's quite possible that black can sacrifice his queen. Now he has a rook and a piece, and then he can take another piece, but after queen into b7, it's all over. You see, this bishop is a monster cutting across the position. This bishop is amazing, always ready to sacrifice, and you have queen attacking a8 and c8. This is all over. So Ravi Teja played queen a3.
So queen a3, yeah, it's gonna be a hard act to follow. I know. I guess I asked for it. So now what? We agree that Pragg has to take the black knight, but does he take with the pawn or the knight? Maybe you think, come on, the white knight is already threatened by the bishop, so why not take with that and, you know, get him out of danger? Well, of course, I wouldn't have asked that question if Pragg had just taken with the knight. So f takes g3. So Pragg leaves the knight to be captured and takes with the pawn. On the plus side, we notice that he opens up an open file, and you know what rooks think about open files. They love them. Imagine you just have one like that. You don't even have to move into it. You're just a rook standing there next to your king, and whoop, there's an open file. But of course, is it enough? Is it worth sacrificing a knight to get that? We will see, because black is taking the knight. And you know, now you go. Now you pause the video and see if you can find the move. And chess is all about, really all about knowing when to say, so what? I lost the knight, so what? I continue with what I was up to, right? So how do we proceed? What were we up to? Well, we've got two open rook files, so it's pretty obvious that maybe one of these rooks should come into action. And what would be the most spectacular rook to bring into action? That would be, of course, to sacrifice one. So how are you going to defend this? I think it's clear to say that there's just poison dripping from that rook. It says, take me. My king has figured everything out. I was sent on a divine mission, and if I die, I know that it will not be in vain, says the rook, or something along the lines of that. Let's see what happens if the black king captures the rook. Boom. So the first move is to bring in the other rook, the comrade, to check him. Now black has, he can go to e8, he can go to g6, or he can go to g8. Let's just examine these possibilities one at a time. If he goes back to e8, then we have the nice quiet move, queen to f1, threatening a checkmate on f7. And if black's trying to prevent it, we just take it. Boom, with the queen. And if he takes back, then what is... This is mate in 1. What is it? Come on. Yes. Bishop f7, mate. So what if the king goes to g6? Then we take the pawn, and we let black try to defend, and we check the king, and this is all over, because there's nowhere to go. He can put the queen here, we'll take it. He can put the bishop there, and then this is mate. So what if he goes into hiding? What if he scrambles back to g8? Well, then we take here. He goes out to h7, and then we take the pawn, because the pawn is no longer covered by the rook, and this is mate as well. So I guess that answers the question, can black take the rook? Was the white rook poisoned? Well, no, we can't, and yes, it was. So, so what does he do, black? Well, he struggles, and he finds an interesting defense. Queen takes g3, and now, this is pretty serious. You can't just make a quiet move now to prepare the attack, because then you will be mated. So what does Pragg do here? Well, you just slide the rook back, nice and slowly, Same move that Beth Harmon made against Borgov in the final game in Queen's Gambit, right? I've got that covered in another video. But even though this is a completely different position, we've still got the rook sliding effortlessly back to f2 to defend. So, black senses that now would be the time to push with some counterplay. And if you're thinking, why not just start the counterplay by taking the rook? Well then, when white takes back the bishop, it's really, really difficult to cover that mate. You can cover it like this, but this is over. So black finds another move, another good counterplay. He plays b5, trying to shut down this file because he's seen enough pieces into his position this way. And now there's another really beautiful silent move. Queen e1. You see the threat there? A nasty discovered check on the queen. So black still can't take the rook here. The same reasons. So he just drops the bishop back, preventing the rook from reaching a discovered check. But now, Pragg just takes on e6. You know, these moves are really difficult to find, especially the queen to e1. Those are the kinds of moves that really, if a child can find these moves, he or she is doing pretty well. And doing well as a child, I think, is just basically having fun, right? I noticed that Pragg says that a lot during interviews, that is his secret, really. You have to play for enjoyment and not for results. And of course, the question is, how do you keep, holding on to the fun of it? And that's, I guess, the truth about many sports. Can you keep the joys in, you know, an ever increasing every day of schedules and demands and tournaments coming up. But I think if we just hold on to that feeling, that notion of joy for a moment, while you may consider Black's next move, you know, Pragg is often asked, what did you feel? What did you feel in this very instant, you know, when you took the pawn on e6 and you knew that this was winning? What goes through your mind there? Emotions. And he's just, I was calculating. That is, to Pragg, that is the joy. He was just absorbed with the game. He was in full flow. And that is joy, you know. I think it's true what they say about happiness, as, you know, both Buddhists and my late mom used to say that if you're in full flow, you're as close to happiness as you can get. So, full flow gives you moves like that. Bishop takes e6 and queen to e1. So Black decides to sacrifice his queen, or to exchange it, because, you know, taking on e6 would just lead to a lost endgame. So he tries to sacrifice his queen. Pragg takes it back. And now, when the dust has settled, you see that, okay, even though Pragg has a white queen, well, Black has two rooks. He has one rook and two pieces for the queen. But, you know, have his rooks come out of hiding? No. They are still on their starting positions. This is on its starting position, just in this and this. The only activated piece that Black has is the bishop. The bishop that you brought out in the third move in the Caro-Kann. So, the question is, how do we proceed from here? You know, Pragg will find the move, I promise you that. You may have noticed that already. He's a hammer on the board, but he's pretty shy on air. You know, sometimes you want to, speaking of joy and all that, you want to ask these wonder kids what they're dreaming about, other than just winning and calculating the game and finding the right move. And I just want to show you one clip with, it's 8-year-old Suhaani Lohia asking Pragg that question. Just have a look at it.
I'm very happy to get the opportunity to interview the world's second youngest GM ever, Praggnanandhaa. When you heard that you were getting your third GM norm in this tournament, how do you feel?
I was very happy that after the 8th round, the fighting came for 9th round, I was just happy.
Who all would you like to thank for this wonderful achievement?
I want to thank my coach and parents and my sister.
So we're back here, and Pragg finds the only winning move in this position, which is d5. Black takes it, and now another silent move, the third one I think in this game, queen to c2. Oh, sorry, looking at this entry point. So Black thinks, okay, I should develop, I should castle, I should activate my pieces. But Pragg says, I'm going to take it. I'm going to force your king to stay in the middle. You know, speaking of dreams, this is the last anecdote about Pragg. I'll leave you to the game. He has no hobbies, as far as I could see, apart from chess and maybe Manchester United. I found this picture of him in a Manchester United shirt. Pragg was asked what he did during, you know, all the pauses that he had in his life during, you know, in airports and that. And he said, I read. So what do you read? What's your favorite book? This. I mean, then you're just all in, right? Boris Gelfand's Positional Decision Making, 13 years old. Okay, so this is a positional decision to bring in the queen, to completely dominate Black's position. He tries to defend with bishop d7, and this is just an instructional way of finishing a game that was, I mean, Black is like a boxer, having gone 10 rounds and defended all the time, and there's not much energy left. Only maybe I can threaten the queen out of the way, but there goes the last rook. You can't go here because the bishop is pinned. So you'll have to just settle with taking the pawn. You lose the rook. You try to develop the knight, but after queen b7, it was all over. Well, I'm sorry, it wasn't in the game. We'll see the last couple of moves, but Black tries to hold on to his position, but it just crumbles in his hands. You know, this way of aligning your army is with the king in front of it. Reminds us about how you attacked in the medieval times, right? King in front. I don't know if you did that, but you know. Rook comes back to b1, d4, trying to create some air. You know, it's not a great castle that the black king has made himself here. You should build castles out of pawns, right? Not pieces and rooks. So he thinks I'll better scramble back here, but queen a7, you know, the knight is pinned, and black had just had enough. So maybe if you're left wondering, how does Pragg compare to Carlsen, Magnus Carlsen, the world champion? Well, at Pragg's age, Carlsen was in fact already above 2,700. And Pragg is not there yet, but I guess it all depends on whether or not you can continue to improve. Lots of people compare him to Vishy Anand, former world champion. He played him a couple of times. The first game was as a 13-year-old, from which I just showed you the beginning. He came very close to winning in a crazy game. I'll link it in the description below if you want to see it. He ended up losing, but yeah, that was it. So, what would be the takeaway of this, another story of a chess prodigy? Of course, there's no one answer to that question. Just leave me a comment down below if you think that your takeaway is different than mine. And mine is, keep the joy. That is what I have learned from Pragg. I've researched his story and I really found no evidence at all that he might be suffering from the, increasing demands of life as a chess pro. He's traveling with his mother and he's got his sister with him. His dad stays at home, making money, making sure that Pragg is safe, basically. I think that's the crux of this. And then I could come with all my questions. What about friend parties, being a teenager, reading other books than Boris Gelfand? But I guess Pragg is just doing what he dreams of doing. He carries that one sentence in his heart, that is, don't play for results, play for enjoyment. And we'll see for how long he can do that. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much. You would make my day if you would hit subscribe or just like it. Let me know if you want other kinds of videos. This is Yellow Rabbit Chess. I'm Morten Runge. Thanks for watching, and as always, take care.